Alright, so welcome ladies and gents to a great fucking video. This is gonna be sort of an overview of the situation in Hong Kong. I've been asked by user Niglet to address what is going on with these protests in Hong Kong. This, of course, will be an overview video. In future videos, I'll get more into detail with this. But I feel like we need to set the stage a little bit and talk about the history of Hong Kong. So Hong Kong, ladies and gents, was a British colony once upon a time. And under British rule, the people of Hong Kong were treated like shit, ladies and gentlemen. They were treated like second-class citizens. They were called the sick men of the East. And the Chinese people were all addicted to British imported opium. To such the extent that the Chinese people collectively stood up against the British and said, no more opium. Our people are tired of being addicted to this shit, and we're tired of being a market for your opium. And so they dumped the opium into the ocean, and there went into effect a war called the Opium Wars, which was essentially British imperialism trying to open up the Chinese markets for their opium. Under this British colonial rule, there was no democracy for the Chinese people living here. There was no democracy whatsoever. And the people of Hong Kong only gained independence from Britain in the 90s, where they were recognized under China as a one government, two systems rule. This rule has pretty much set the precedent in Hong Kong since then, where the Hong Kong government is given a certain degree of autonomy with the understanding that they are part of China. So all of this sort of set the stage. So what happens? Well, there's this kid from Hong Kong who, from what I understand, is with his girlfriend in Taiwan. He murders his girlfriend, stuffs her body in a suitcase, and tries to hide it somewhere. Alright, he's discovered, but before he can be tried, he flees back to Hong Kong. And under the current law, he cannot be extradited. So the law that started this entire thing was to alter the extradition rules that would allow Hong Kong to extradite criminals to China to go on trial. And immediately upon hearing this, the bourgeoisie and the petty bourgeoisie in Hong Kong shit their collective pants, ladies and gentlemen. They shit their pants because all of a sudden they were like, oh shit, we're gonna get shipped over to China, so we have to stand trial for being the capitalist shitlords that we are. So you can understand why the ruling class in Hong Kong is pissing their pants over this extradition bill. And the US leaders are foaming at the mouth. The Western capitalists are foaming at the mouth because this is their big moment. This is our chance, ladies and gentlemen, to sponsor a color revolution in Hong Kong, to create a wedge and a rift between China and Hong Kong, which is a territory of China, and then to essentially try to piss all over the Belt Road Initiative bonfire before it's even lit, ladies and gentlemen. This is an economic move by the United States to prevent China from completing the Belt Road Initiative in any kind of reasonable time frame is to drive a wedge between the Chinese mainland and Hong Kong. And ultimately, it's to try to create a U.S. Friendly puppet government in Hong Kong that would help us in our economic efforts to undermine China. Because keep in mind, the U.S. and China are in the midst of a trade war right now, and the U.S. is losing. And China, under the Belt Road Initiative, stands to gain a tremendous amount of clout on the world trade stage. They're going to supplant the United States as the dominant economic power of the world. And it has the U.S. bourgeoisie scared as fuck. So, they whip the National Endowment for Democracy, our old friends we covered in the last video, into shape. And the National Endowment for Democracy already has their grubby little fucking hands all over Hong Kong. I love their little thing supporting freedom around the world. Freedom for who exactly? For the capitalists and their US-backed puppets? So anyway, there's a lot of very troubling things going on. You had the leader of this protest movement caught with a U.S. diplomat. Alright? This ain't good, folks. This ain't a good look if you're trying to pass yourself off as being this independent pro-democracy movement, to be caught working with the government of another country, a government official of another country, one that's hostile to China. Not a good look. They urged the U.S. to immediately make a clean break from anti-China forces. So this is what the government of Hong Kong is sending to the United States in retaliation to that. Refrain from meddling with Hong Kong affairs and avoid going further down the wrong path. U.S. diplomat is a political counselor at the U.S. Consulate General in Hong Kong. According to the newspaper, protest leader Joshua Wong said he met with the U.S. consulate. They discussed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, a bill proposed by the U.S. Congress in 2017. Students also asked the U.S. not to export equipment to the Hong Kong police. Newspaper later published the name of the woman's husband, who also works for the State Department, and the names of their 2 children. The U.S. State Department said the publishing of the names was thuggish. Oh! But what's not thuggish? Having a CIA puppet organization, the National Endowment of Democracy, going in China trying to do a fake fucking color revolution to prop up U.S. imperialism abroad. Yeah, that's not thuggish at all. There's nothing thuggish about what the United States has done. Fucking hilarious. The U.S. hypocrisy in this situation's fucking hilarious. It's like, what if, for example, the Chinese government was sponsoring a mass protest movement in California, all right, and they went to some of these protest leaders in this Californian protest, and they met with them. They gave them funding, they gave them money, they gave them support. And all of a sudden, these Californian protesters were saying, Xi Jinping, please come liberate us. Xi Jinping, we need you. No capitalism in the U.S. Yeah, I'm sure that the United States would be totally friendly towards those California protests. I'm sure. If the shoe was on the other foot, the U.S. government would be cracking heads in the streets, arresting anybody affiliated with these protests, and putting them in fucking Guantanamo. And if you don't think that's the reality of the situation, you're high off your ass. If If you ask me, the Chinese government is being extremely prudent in their response. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If the Chinese government went in and started cracking heads and arresting these protesters en masse, that would give the United States and the West casus belli to do a full-blown invasion of Hong Kong. They'll call it a liberation, but it's a fucking invasion. It's a sovereign Chinese territory, and they're trying to snatch it away from them. So, the Hong Kong government has said that the extradition bill is done. It's over, alright? It's a null point, because there is no more extradition bill, alright? You guys won. So why the protest? Why persist? Well, it's because now the protests have escalated into a full-blown riot. A riot against the Hong Kong government. A riot against the Chinese government. A riot to call for the liberation of Hong Kong by the US and Western imperialists. What they ultimately want, what these protesters want, is to escalate these riots to such a degree that the Chinese government will be forced to intervene, and when they do, the United States and their corporate backers will say, finally we have a chance to strike at China. Is this what's going to happen? I hope not. I hope the Chinese government finds a way to handle these protests in a way that doesn't trigger US interventionism. But it's looking more and more unlikely by the day. You see all the fuck over Reddit on the front page. All about these Hong Kong protests and why we should support these Hong Kong protests. See, let's go to political video right here, front page. I didn't even fucking try. There is Hong Kong imperialist Hong Kong propaganda all the fuck over the place. I've seen it on left-wing subreddits. I've seen it on right-wing subreddits. But the politically neutral ones, the liberal ones, they're the fucking worst. They're the ones going around saying, oh yeah, dude, we should totally support these protests in Hong Kong against the evil red commies. You know, first of all, there's nothing democratic about these protests. These aren't a protest for democracy, ladies and gentlemen. These are a protest against communism. These are a protest trying to get the United States to intervene in Hong Kong, in Chinese affairs. Every single one of these fucking protesters is a cuck for capitalism. They're a cog in the US imperialist machine, and they probably don't even know it, ladies and gentlemen, because a lot of these people look young. They look like they're just trying to find a cause to follow. This Joshua Wong kid, who's like the leader of the protest, he's only like 22 years old, alright? He probably doesn't understand that he's just a fucking puppet at this point. He's a figurehead of a phony fucking movement that has the backing of the United States government. Alright, that's all this is. It's a dog and pony show. It's not a legitimate protest. There's nothing pro-democratic about these fucking protests. They want the United States to come in and make Hong Kong a US colony. Well, it's not gonna happen. Not under my watch, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna try my damnedest to debunk and disprove all of this Hong Kong bullshit that I see all the fuck over the internet and all over Reddit, because I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing that we as leftists should support these Hong Kong chuds that want to cuck their entire country out to capitalism. What? Do you like the opium wars? Do you want more opium wars? Because that's what capitalism gives you, people of Hong Kong. Jesus Christ. Anyway, this is just an introduction. Check out my future videos where I will cover this topic in much more detail, because I'm just getting started, ladies and gentlemen.